She thought the cleaner was just a nobody, until the truth shook the entire company. One intern, one test, one secret that changed everything. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you love stories filled with truth, justice, and unexpected twists. Let's begin. The winter sun barely lit the quiet streets of Lausanne as frost clung to the window panes of the Stahl Group headquarters. Inside the towering glass building, employees hurried through the marble-floored lobby, their heels clicking in practiced rhythm, their breaths forming fleeting clouds in the chilled morning air. Today was supposed to be just another Tuesday in Switzerland's most prestigious architecture firm, but something unseen stirred beneath the polished surface. A woman entered the lobby alone, unnoticed by the security guards, her shoulders hunched beneath a knitted shawl, her gloved hands clutching a metal bucket and an old mop. Her name was Mary Ann Stahl. Not that anyone here knew it, not today. To them, she was Greta, a last-minute replacement for the usual cleaning woman who had fallen ill. Her wiry gray hair was pinned under a worn scarf, and her coat hung heavy over a plain beige skirt that reached her ankles. She looked like someone who had taken a train in from the countryside. Humble, invisible. But make no mistake, Mary Ann Stahl was not a cleaner. She was the owner of this empire. Or at least she had been until her husband Friedrich passed away 2 years ago. Now, her only son, Lucas Stahl, freshly returned from a decade in London, was about to assume leadership of the company his father had built. Mary Ann had spent every day since Friedrich's funeral preparing Lucas for this day, for the weight of the Stahl legacy. And yet, something unsettled her. It wasn't his competence. Lucas was brilliant. His education, vision, and calm charisma had already impressed the board. But Mary Ann knew all too well that a kingdom could fall not from outside attack, but from a queen with the wrong heart. She had seen it many times. Men with vision ruined by women who only loved their titles, their fortunes, their spotlight. She wouldn't allow that for Lucas. And so, she devised a plan. It was absurd. It was theatrical. It was something her late husband would have raised an eyebrow at and called madness. But it was also necessary. She needed to see the truth for herself, to learn which of the young women circling her son were worth his trust, or his heart. And that's how Greta came to mop the corridors of her own company. Mary Ann made her way to the 12th floor. Operations. This floor housed the heart of the company. Architectural model rooms, project boards, open-plan desks bustling with engineers and design assistants. The team here was young, ambitious, and in a hurry to climb. She entered quietly, setting down her bucket near the coffee station. Within seconds, conversation hushed. A tall blonde woman in stiletto heels stopped mid-laugh and glanced down at Mary Ann, her nose crinkling in distaste. Who is this?" she said loudly, looking around. "Maybe she took a wrong turn from the train station," someone else snickered. "Or from 1975, added Sophie DeClaire, smirking behind her cappuccino. Sophie was the daughter of a board member and considered herself as close to royalty as one could get in an office setting. She wore an ivory silk blouse, a Cartier watch, and a glare sharp enough to cut glass. Mary Ann said nothing. She dipped the mop in the bucket and began wiping the floor in slow, steady strokes. "I can smell the bleach from here," muttered Clara Wolfe, another senior staffer with a penchant for gossip and overcomplicated hairstyles. "Ugh, it's barely 9 a.m. and it already smells like a hospital." The group laughed. Mary Ann kept cleaning, her joints aching, her dignity bruised but intact. Only one person didn't laugh. Hannah Muller, a junior intern seated near the windows, looked up from her sketch pad and frowned. She didn't say anything, didn't glare, didn't even smile. She simply looked at Mary Ann with neutral curiosity, human acknowledgement. That, Mary Ann realized, was rare. She noted the nameplate on her desk, H. Muller. The girl had a pile of blueprints beside her and an untouched croissant balanced next to her tea. She looked about 24, her brown hair tucked behind her ears, her expression calm and slightly introverted. Interesting. Throughout the morning, Mary Ann moved from corner to corner, ignored or ridiculed, except by Hannah. Once, the mop slipped from her grip and made a loud clang. People turned to look, annoyed. Sophie rolled her eyes. "Can we get an actual cleaner in here?" she said, "one who doesn't sound like a fallen chandelier." Greta apologized softly and bent to retrieve the mop. Her knees cracked audibly. Only Hannah got up and silently handed her the handle. Throughout the morning, Mary Ann moved from corner to corner, ignored or ridiculed, except by Hannah. Once, the mop slipped from her grip and made a loud clang. People turned to look, annoyed. Sophie rolled her eyes. "Can we get an actual cleaner in here?" she said, "one who doesn't sound like a fallen chandelier." Greta apologized softly and bent to retrieve the mop. Her knees cracked audibly. Only Hannah got up and silently handed her the handle. "Thank you," Mary Ann said in a whisper. Hannah only nodded and returned to her desk. At lunch, while others gathered in the break room with takeout boxes and sparkling water, Mary Ann sat alone in the supply closet eating a sandwich she'd packed herself. She overheard them talk about Lucas's return. "He's coming Thursday, right?" said Clara. "I saw the email." Sophie beamed. "I've already planned my outfit. I hope he's as charming as the papers say." "Charming and rich," Clara added. "A rare combination." "And hopefully smart enough to see through the interns," Sophie sneered. That night, Mary Ann returned home to her lakefront villa and removed her disguise. The marble countertops, the warmth of the fire, it all contrasted sharply with the cruelty she'd absorbed all day. Yet her heart was calm. One girl had stood out. One girl had passed the first test. Thursday arrived like a storm. Everyone knew Lucas Stahl was coming. The office transformed overnight. Desks were tidied, perfume sprayed, makeup reapplied in the restrooms. Sophie wore a form-fitting navy dress that made her look like she'd walked off the cover of Vogue Business. Even Hannah wore something slightly nicer, a soft blue sweater and black slacks. But unlike the others, she wasn't performing. She was simply present. When Lucas entered, the entire floor paused. He was tall, clean-shaven, with ash-blonde hair and calm blue eyes. He wore a tailored charcoal suit and spoke in a low, confident tone. He shook hands, smiled politely, but his gaze moved fast, observing, evaluating. And then he noticed Mary Ann, or rather, Greta. She was on her knees scrubbing a scuff off the tile, a cleaner on the floor, gray hair in her face, ignored by everyone. Lucas frowned and walked over. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said gently. "You don't need to do that on your knees. Where is the janitorial staff? Shouldn't someone be helping you?" Mary Ann looked up, feigning surprise. "It's all right, sir. I'm used to it." Before she could say more, Sophie appeared, smiling sweetly. "Oh, Lucas, don't worry," she interrupted. "She's just our temp cleaner. She likes to keep busy." Lucas's expression hardened. "That doesn't mean she shouldn't be respected." Sophie blinked. "Of course, I didn't mean—" "I'm sure you didn't," he said, moving on. From her desk, Hannah looked up. She had heard every word. Their eyes met. Lucas paused. She didn't bat her lashes, she didn't toss her hair, she just looked at him, curious, calm, and unafraid. And just like that, something in the air shifted. By the end of the day, whispers filled the corridors. Did you see how he spoke to Sophie? He noticed Hannah. Can you believe it? Sophie was fuming. Clara tried to console her with gossip, but the damage had been done. Back in the janitor's closet, Mary Ann sat on an overturned bucket and smiled. Her son had noticed the right girl. Now came the harder part. Would that girl survive what came next? Because the real test was only beginning. The air inside the Stahl Group headquarters had shifted. The atmosphere was no longer simply professional. It had become competitive, electric, dangerous. All it had taken was one moment. The company's new CEO, Lucas Stahl, had returned and looked past the polished smiles and designer heels, and paused instead on the quiet intern, Hannah Mueller. From that day on, everything changed. The morning after Lucas's return, Hannah arrived at the office early, as always. The receptionist offered polite nods. The security guard gave her a warm smile. She moved with calm confidence, her mind already focused on the urban housing project she'd been assigned to assist. But something was different. As she stepped onto the 12th floor, the energy in the room changed. Heads turned, conversations hushed, whispers. She felt them before she heard them. She's the one, right? The intern Lucas talked to? I heard she had lunch with him in the executive lounge. Please. That girl probably can't even pronounce Chardonnay. Hannah sat at her desk and booted up her computer, pretending not to hear. But deep inside, unease stirred. Across the room, Sophie DeClaire watched her like a hawk. Sophie's expression had transformed, no longer the smug confidence of a woman at the top of the social ladder. Now it was calculation. Her father sat on the company board, but even power by association couldn't erase what had happened. Lucas had barely glanced at her, and that meant Hannah was a threat. Later that day, in the break room, Hannah was pouring tea when a voice cut through the silence. Well, the chosen one drinks peppermint, Sophie said sweetly, stepping inside with Clara Wolfe in tow. Hannah looked up, her expression neutral. Morning. Oh, don't be modest, Clara cooed. You're famous now. I don't know what you're talking about. Sophie leaned against the counter. Don't you? Funny. Lucas Stahl walks in, looks at you once, and suddenly people are whispering your name like you're royalty. I didn't do anything. Exactly. Sophie smiled, tilting her head. And yet, here you are, doing nothing, getting everything. Before Hannah could reply, another voice entered the room. Excuse me. They turned. It was Greta, the cleaning woman, only this time there was something different in her tone. It wasn't submissive. It was level. The kitchen's being cleaned, Mary Ann said, gripping her bucket. If you finished your coffee, I'll need a moment. Sophie sneered. We're having a conversation. Mary Ann didn't blink. And now I'm doing my job. Hannah gave her a small nod, grateful, and stepped out without another word. Behind her, Sophie muttered something under her breath. Something cruel. But Hannah was learning that silence was sometimes the sharpest weapon. That evening, Mary Ann sat alone in her modest sitting room in the villa on the hill. The fireplace crackled softly. Outside, Lake Geneva glistened under a silver moon. She had invited Hannah for dinner, not as a cleaner, not as Greta. But still, she had not told the girl who she truly was. There were reasons for that. Mary Ann had always believed in watching people in their unguarded moments. Titles could corrupt, wealth could blind. But authenticity? That was rare. That had to be tested. The doorbell rang. She rose, wiped her hands, and opened it. Hannah stood outside in a gray coat, clutching a bottle of inexpensive wine and a shy smile. "Good evening, ma'am," she said politely. "Come in, my dear," Mary Ann replied warmly. The interior surprised Hannah. It was elegant, yes, but not excessive. Tasteful. Classical. There were art books, a baby grand piano, and photographs of a man with steel blue eyes, Lucas's father. A few images of a younger Lucas were tucked in frames on the mantel, but none so obvious to betray Mary Ann's secret. "Dinner smells incredible," Hannah said, breathing in the aroma of grilled fish and rosemary potatoes. "It's nothing fancy," Mary Ann said. "I enjoy cooking, especially when I have company." They ate together like old friends. The awkwardness faded quickly. Conversation flowed. Hannah talked about growing up in Lucerne, about her single mother's sacrifices, her scholarship to Zurich, her dream of designing affordable housing. Mary Ann listened carefully, and then she asked, "Tell me something, child. Do you believe kindness is weakness?" Hannah frowned. "No, kindness is strength most people are afraid of." Mary Ann smiled to herself. Later, after dessert, Hannah glanced around. "If you don't mind me asking, where do you live, really?" Mary Ann chuckled. "Here, of course. I mean," Hannah hesitated, then smiled. "This doesn't feel like a cleaner's house." Mary Ann's eyes twinkled. "Maybe it's not. Maybe I just clean where I choose." The next day, the trap was set. Sophie had spent the night brewing her plan. She wouldn't risk being direct, not yet. Instead, she would buy Hannah off. Just before lunch, Hannah received a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the Edelweiss Cafe. Come alone. It's important." Curious but cautious, she went. Sophie was waiting in a corner booth, her expression unreadable. On the table before her, a sleek brown envelope. "Sit down," she said smoothly. "Let's speak woman to woman." Hannah remained standing. "What is this?" Sophie tapped the envelope. 5,000 francs. Clean, untraceable, enough to pay your tuition, your rent, whatever sob story you're holding on to. Hannah's jaw tensed. "Take it," Sophie continued. "Quit the internship, walk away. No need to make this uglier than it needs to be." Hannah stared at her, then at the envelope. Her mind flashed. Her mother's medical bills, her student loan. The money would change everything. But then she looked back at Sophie. "No," she said. Sophie blinked. "Excuse me? I won't take your money. I won't sell my integrity." "You think this is about integrity?" Sophie snapped, rising. "You're an intern. You don't belong in our world." "Maybe not," Hannah said softly, "but I belong to myself." She turned and walked away. Sophie's eyes burned with rage. She pulled out her phone. She said no. She texted Clara, "Plan B." What Hannah didn't know was that someone had been sitting 2 tables away, sipping coffee, reading a newspaper. The same someone who had been watching since day one. Mary Ann. She had seen everything, heard everything, and now she was sure. The following morning, chaos struck. Hannah arrived at the office as usual, but something was wrong. People stared, phones buzzed. Clara was whispering, holding her phone up with a gleeful grin. Sophie stood in the center of the floor and raised her voice. "Everyone," she said cheerfully, "I think you should hear this." She pressed play on a voice memo. A distorted, edited version of Hannah's voice echoed through the office. "Lucas is already noticing me. It's only a matter of time before he starts chasing. I deserve this." Laughter exploded. A few gasped. Others exchanged amused looks. Hannah's face drained of color. That's not real." "Sounded real to me," Clara purred. Sophie stepped closer. Next time, be careful who you cross." Just then, the glass doors at the end of the hallway opened. Lucas Stahl walked in. The laughter stopped. He surveyed the room, confused, then focused on Hannah. She looked like she'd been struck. "What's going on?" he asked. Silence. Sophie stepped forward, smiling innocently. "Just a little fun, Lucas. Office humor." Lucas's eyes sharpened. "Hannah, are you all right?" She nodded, trembling. His voice turned cold. "Sophie, my office, now." Hours later, Hannah sat in the staff kitchen, her tea untouched. Her reputation was crumbling. Her knees shook. Sophie had gone too far. And worse, Hannah had no way to prove her innocence. That night, she sat across from Mary Ann at dinner, silent. Mary Ann reached over and took her hand. "Tell me the truth," she said gently. "Do you have feelings for Lucas?" Hannah blinked, startled. "What? No, I barely know him." Mary Ann studied her carefully. The girl was sincere. She wasn't chasing fortune. "Then listen to me," she said softly. "You are in danger. These girls won't stop. They are afraid of what you represent." "Why?" Hannah whispered. "I haven't done anything." "That's exactly why they fear you," Mary Ann said. But none of them, not Sophie, not Hannah, not even Mary Ann, knew what was coming next, because someone had just taken things too far. And soon, everything would come crashing down. The dawn broke with a bitter wind curling over Lake Geneva. The city was quiet in its early hours, but inside a small studio apartment on Rue du Simplon, Hannah Muller sat wide awake, her hands clasped around a cold mug of tea. Her eyes were bloodshot, her chest hollow with fear. She hadn't slept. Not after what happened. Not after being arrested. It had been a blur. 2 police officers at her door at 6 in the morning. A polite but firm tone. "Are you Hannah Muller? You're under arrest for financial fraud." Neighbors stared from behind curtains. Her heart had dropped as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. She had cried in the car, screamed that it was a mistake, but it hadn't mattered. They showed her a bank account and her name filled with thousands of francs, money she'd never seen before. A forged contract, a fake email trail, evidence that was almost too perfect. And when they left her alone in the holding cell, she realized this was no misunderstanding. Someone had framed her, and she knew exactly who. Hannah sat quietly on the hard bench, her legs tucked under her, shivering in the poorly heated detention room. Hours passed like years. Her thoughts spiraled. Would she be expelled from university? Would her mother ever recover if she heard about this? What if no one believed her? A guard finally appeared. "Someone posted your bail." Hannah's eyes widened. "Who?" The guard shrugged. "She's waiting outside." With a trembling heart, Hannah walked toward the reception. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Every step felt surreal. And then she saw her. Standing near the doors, arms folded, wrapped in a thick gray coat, her face heavy with concern. Greta, or as Hannah had always called her, Mama Greta. Hannah's lip trembled. "Mama, I swear I didn't." Mary Ann stepped forward and wrapped her in a firm embrace. "I know," she whispered gently, stroking Hannah's hair. "I know, my dear." Hannah broke down, sobbing into the chest of the woman she still believed was a humble cleaner. Meanwhile, across town, Lucas Stahl sat in his penthouse office, the sunlight glinting off the polished wood desk in front of him. But his mind wasn't on architectural contracts or urban planning meetings. He stared at the headline on his tablet screen. "Junior intern at Stahl Group arrested for fraud. Ties to executive account breach." His throat tightened. No, it didn't make sense. Hannah had looked him in the eye, broken but clear. There was no trace of guilt, no panic, just heartbreak. And Lucas had trusted his instincts all his life. They had never failed him before. He stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and stormed out of the building. In a luxury hotel suite on the other side of Lausanne, Sophie DeClaire leaned back on a velvet chaise, sipping a glass of champagne. The view from the suite was breathtaking. Lake Geneva stretched like a mirror, peaceful and untouched. Her friend, Clara Wolfe, lounged nearby, scrolling through social media. "People are saying Lucas went to the police station," Clara said. Sophie smirked. "Let him. It's too late. The arrest is done. The scandal is public. She'll be gone by Monday." Clara hesitated. "I don't know, Sophie. This is dangerous. You fabricated a bank trail. That's a crime." Sophie's eyes narrowed. "I didn't fabricate anything. My contacts handled it. There's no proof. And that girl, she doesn't have the power to fight us." Clara looked away. She wasn't so sure anymore. That night, Hannah sat in Mary Ann's villa, her hands still trembling. She had barely eaten. Her eyes kept darting toward the front door, as if someone might come knocking again. "I don't understand why this is happening," she whispered. "I haven't done anything." "I know," Mary Ann said gently, "but someone wants to break you." Hannah looked at her through tired eyes. "Why do you care so much?" Mary Ann hesitated. It was time. She stood, walked toward the fireplace, and picked up a small photo frame. Inside was a picture of a much younger Lucas standing between his parents, all smiles. "That's my son," she said quietly. Hannah blinked. "Lucas?" Mary Ann turned. "Yes. My name is not Greta. It's Mary Ann Stahl. This company belongs to my family. I've been watching you from the start." The silence that followed was deafening. Hannah's breath caught in her throat. What?" "I needed to know who was real," Mary Ann said. "The women around my son are not what they seem. But your kindness was not a performance. You treated me like a person, not a cleaner." Hannah stood, reeling. "So, all this time, you were testing me?" Mary Ann stepped closer. "Yes, and I'm sorry, but it was the only way I could know who to trust." Hannah didn't know what to say, but part of her, despite the deception, felt relief. She wasn't crazy. She hadn't imagined the cruelty, the madness. Someone had finally confirmed what she had felt all along. "You're the only one I believe can help Lucas," Mary Ann said. "But first, we must clear your name." Lucas stood in the company's surveillance control room, his jaw clenched. The security officer shook his head. "Sir, the files from last week, when the breach occurred, are gone." "Gone?" "Erased, deliberately. Someone covered their tracks." Lucas turned toward the glass and looked out at the city. Someone had destroyed the evidence, and that meant Hannah was telling the truth. He had doubted her, and now he would make it right. That night, Sophie awoke in her hotel suite, her heart racing. She had dreamed of Greta. No, not Greta, Mary Ann Stahl. The woman had been standing in a dark hallway, staring at her with piercing eyes. Sophie gasped and reached for her phone. It vibrated as she touched it. A message from an unknown number. "You touched the wrong person." Sophie dropped the phone. Her heart thundered. She wasn't safe anymore. The next morning, Lucas entered the office early. The corridors were quiet. The staff, unusually subdued. Word had spread. The CEO was angry, and he wasn't hiding it. He called a private meeting with the board. "I want an internal audit," he said. "Every transaction for the last 2 months, every IP login, every staff communication, and bring in an external cybersecurity firm. Now." His voice left no room for discussion. Then he walked out and went to Hannah's apartment. She opened the door slowly. Her eyes were tired, but there was still light in them. "I need to know the truth," Lucas said. "Did you take the money?" "No," she whispered. "I swear on everything I love, I didn't." "Do you know who did?" She hesitated. "I think it was Sophie, but I have no proof." Lucas nodded. "I'll find it." 2 days later, he did. The cybersecurity firm traced a fake account connected to Hannah's name, created from a device registered under Clara Wolf's name. When confronted, Clara cracked. "I didn't mean to. Sophie said it would be harmless, that it was just a warning. I didn't think the police would really arrest her." She broke down in tears. Lucas didn't say a word. He simply stood and left the room. At the next company-wide meeting, the truth came out. Lucas stood before the entire staff, flanked by Mary Ann. An internal investigation has revealed that the accusations against Hannah Muller were fabricated. We have reported all findings to the authorities. The individuals responsible will be held accountable. Gasps, whispers, shock. Sophie and Clara were escorted out by security within the hour. The rest of the office? Silent. But in the back, Hannah sat with her hands in her lap, her eyes low. When Lucas stepped down from the stage, he walked straight to her. "I'm sorry," he said. "You believed them," she replied quietly. "I won't make that mistake again." Weeks passed. The air at the Stahl Group changed. The whispers faded. The tension lifted. Sophie and Clara's desks remained empty, but the weight in Hannah's chest lingered, until one evening Mary Ann invited her for dinner once more. This time, Lucas was there. They sat by the fire, talked about life, about mistakes, about second chances, and when Mary Ann placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder and smiled, it wasn't as a test, it was as family. The end. She thought the cleaner was just a nobody, until the truth shook the entire company. One intern, one test, one secret that changed everything. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you love stories filled with truth, justice, and unexpected twists. Let's begin.